Something disturbing has started behind the palace gates. Not a headline, not gossip, not whispers from celebrity magazines. Something far quieter and far more serious. According to insiders, Buckingham Palace has begun what they are privately calling an internal verification review. And the subject of this review is Archie and Lilibet. For the monarchy, this is almost unthinkable. Because if there is one thing the crown fears more than scandal, more than public criticism, more than negative opinion, it is uncertainty, especially uncertainty around the royal bloodline. Royal titles can be taken away. Public duties can be removed. But if there is even a question, even a faint shadow of doubt about someone's rightful place in the bloodline, the entire foundation of the monarchy begins to shake. The line of succession must be clear, solid, and completely beyond challenge. So if the palace has taken this step, this cold, quiet internal investigation, then something has gone very seriously wrong. Insiders describe the mood inside Buckingham Palace as frozen, the kind of tension that only appears when the crown senses a threat, not from the outside, but from within. What started as whispers about small inconsistencies has now grown into a full-scale review, conducted in complete silence, buried beneath centuries-old rules, and guarded with the seriousness of a full constitutional crisis. The question is, what exactly pushed the palace to take this step? It wasn't one dramatic event. It wasn't a single explosive scandal. It wasn't even the loud rumors that have been circling Meghan and Harry for years. No, what triggered the palace was a pattern made up of small, quiet inconsistencies. Details that, at first glance, seemed completely harmless. A missing line in paperwork. A timeline that didn't match previous statements. A document changed with no clear explanation. A ceremony announced without official verification. Procedures that simply didn't follow the royal standards that have been honored for generations. One small oddity can be overlooked. Two can be excused. But when insiders placed these details side by side, they no longer looked harmless. They formed a picture that felt deeply off, and every time someone tried to explain one inconsistency, another one appeared somewhere else. According to palace sources, senior advisors eventually reached a point where they could no longer look away. Because these inconsistencies weren't scattered randomly, they formed a clear pattern around the births of Archie and Lilibet, the very moments that determine whether a child is genuinely part of the royal line. And in the monarchy, when a pattern touches the bloodline, the palace does not debate, it does not guess, and it does not delay, it investigates. That is how the internal review began. Quietly, cautiously, and with the full understanding that what they might find could change everything. The first stop in the palace's review was straightforward. Examine the earliest official document connected to the Sussex children. Archie's birth certificate. For most families, a birth certificate is simply paperwork. But for the royal family, it is a legal cornerstone. It establishes identity, legitimacy, and a child's place within the line of succession. Everything on it must be clear, consistent, and permanent. But Archie's certificate didn't stay that way. Months after his birth, a quiet edit was made. Meghan's full legal name, Rachel Meghan Markle, was removed. Gone in its place appeared only her title. No first name, no last name, just the styling approved by the crown. This was almost unheard of, because to change a birth certificate, someone must file the request, someone must approve it, someone must provide a justification, and there must always be a traceable reason. But when investigators looked back at the sequence of events, nothing added up. Meghan claimed the palace requested the change. Palace insiders claimed Meghan's team pushed for it. The stories didn't match, and more importantly, no clear paper trail existed explaining why the edit was necessary at all. For the monarchy, that is a serious problem. Because if the foundational document of a potential royal child was altered once, the question immediately becomes, why was it changed? And what else might not align? This was only the beginning. And the deeper the palace dug, the stranger the story became. Once palace staff examined the altered birth certificate, they moved backward, straight into the events surrounding Archie's birth itself. And that is when the second wave of irregularities appeared. Normally, royal births follow a routine so predictable it might as well be carved in stone. First, the palace announces the mother has gone into labor. Second, royal-approved doctors verify the birth. Third, a formal bulletin is placed outside Buckingham Palace. Fourth, the public sees the baby in a controlled ceremonial appearance. But for Archie, none of this happened the way it should have. According to insiders, Meghan and Harry did not announce labor at all. Hours passed in complete silence. Then, just when the public was expecting news, a statement was released saying Meghan had just gone into labor, even though Archie had already been born 8 hours earlier. That meant the public was being told the beginning of the story after the ending had already happened. And for a royal birth, that simply does not happen. Even more confusing, the announcement came before any verified medical confirmation. The order was completely reversed. Everything felt backward, vague, and strangely controlled. By the time Meghan and Harry appeared for their first photo opportunity, the moment felt less like a traditional royal welcome and more like a carefully staged presentation, one that offered no real clarity and answered very few questions. Inside the palace, staff struggled to match the family's public statements with a timeline they were used to carefully documenting. It was the first real sign that this story did not line up with a century of royal rules, and the palace still had much deeper to go. Make sure to subscribe to Royal Report Daily for more breaking royal investigations and exclusive palace news. After the timeline came the paperwork. In royal births, paperwork is everything. Traditionally, multiple medical professionals are present. Their names are listed on the records. Witnesses sign key documents. Everything is stamped, filed, and logged immediately after the birth. But when palace investigators reviewed Archie's file, they didn't find a scandal. They found gaps. There were missing signatures where official witnesses should have been. There were no listed doctors matching the typical pattern of royal deliveries. Internal staff said the hospital information didn't line up with the procedures they knew well, and the documentation as a whole lacked the precision the royal system is built entirely upon. Sources inside palace walls whispered that the process did not meet the standard the monarchy requires for a child connected to the line of succession. Not enough to directly accuse anyone of deliberate wrongdoing, but more than enough to raise a serious flag. The palace does not operate on feelings or assumptions. It operates on records, confirmation, and verifiable proof. And too many pieces of Archie's birth simply did not meet those standards. These weren't dramatic, explosive issues. They were structural ones. And structure is exactly what the monarchy relies on to protect its bloodline across generations. But if Archie's paperwork raised questions, Lilibet's paperwork, or rather the complete absence of it, would take those questions to an entirely new level. If Archie's birth felt unusual, Lilibet's birth was something the palace had genuinely never encountered before. Her arrival was announced not through Buckingham Palace, not through royal doctors, not through any official bulletin, but through Meghan and Harry's personal team in California. A polished press release, a handful of carefully selected photos, and nothing else. No British medical staff were present, no royal midwives, no palace witness statements, no official registry entry through the UK system, not even a formal acknowledgement from the royal household. For a child with any connection to the royal line, this was completely unprecedented. Sources say that when investigators tried to reconstruct Lilibet's birth timeline, the gaps were even larger than those surrounding Archie. Everything had happened entirely outside the monarchy's jurisdiction. No official documents were logged on British soil. Nothing was verified by the Crown's established medical procedures. And even the visual record created its own questions. Photographs of Meghan during this pregnancy did not show a consistent physical progression. Some images appeared ahead of schedule, others behind. Certain angles deepened speculation further. But the palace was not focused on public opinions or internet theories. They were focused on protocol, and protocol was missing. Then came the detail that insiders described as deeply concerning. The doctor who allegedly delivered Lilibet reportedly closed her entire medical practice just 2 weeks after the supposed birth. No explanation was ever publicly given. No royal documentation tied her to the event in any verifiable way. It was the kind of irregularity that, when added to the growing file of unanswered questions, made the entire situation completely impossible to ignore. Lilibet's birth was not just unusual. It existed entirely outside the royal system, leaving the monarchy with no official confirmation, no verified paperwork, and no link whatsoever to its own established historical processes. And this is where the palace's quiet concern turned into something considerably colder. Because if a child's birth cannot be verified according to the standards of the crown, then everything that follows titles, status, lineage becomes uncertain and unstable. If the questions around the births caused discomfort inside Buckingham Palace, what came next caused genuine alarm. Because the moment that should have permanently tied Lilibet to the monarchy forever, her christening uncovered the biggest irregularity yet. Royal christenings are not simply warm and sweet family moments. They are constitutional events. They link a royal child to the Church of England, an institution that is legally and historically bound to the crown itself. Every christening must be logged, witnessed, officially certified, and signed. Even private ceremonies leave a completely clear official trail. But when senior palace advisors quietly checked the Church of England's registry, they didn't find a private entry. They didn't find a confidential note. They didn't find a bishop's signature. They found absolutely nothing. No record of Lilibet ever being christened under the authority of the Church of England. No documentation. No acknowledgement. No confirmation from the Archbishop's office. For any child, that would be highly unusual. For a child with potential ties to the royal line of succession, it represents a direct constitutional problem. And then came a second wave of concern. Photographs of the children across different public appearances didn't appear visually consistent. Even insiders quietly noted that the child shown on one holiday card did not closely resemble the child. Seen months later in the couple's documentary footage, the palace didn't comment publicly, but inside the review, these visual inconsistencies were quietly added to the growing file. By this point, the question was no longer whether something was unusual. The question was how deep the inconsistencies actually went. Once the christening issue fully surfaced, Buckingham Palace shifted from quiet concern to a fully structured investigation. A complete internal team was assembled: senior advisors, archivists, constitutional lawyers, and church liaison officials. Their mission was not to publicly accuse anyone, it was to carefully reconstruct everything. Every birth announcement, every official statement, every public appearance, every medical claim, every document tied to Archie and Lilibet, all of it compared against the standards the monarchy has followed, without exception, for generations. Sources say the team built what insiders described as a physical timeline wall. Birth dates, announcements, hospital reports, christening claims, public photographs, media statements, and internal protocols all laid out side by side and examined against established royal procedure. And the deeper they went, the larger the gaps grew. They found missing witness signatures, delayed paperwork, contradictory accounts from Meghan and Harry, medical details that didn't match standard procedural norms, a birth that took place entirely outside any royal verification channel, a christening that left no ecclesiastical footprint in any official record, and documentation that was fundamentally inconsistent with the precision the crown requires and has always required. Individually, none of these issues were explosive on their own, but together they formed a constitutional puzzle the palace could no longer ignore. At this stage, insiders say the review became less about controversy and more about one singular priority: protecting the monarchy's future. Don't forget to subscribe to Royal Report Daily and hit the bell icon to stay updated on this developing investigation. With the file assembled, Buckingham Palace now faces 3 possible paths forward, each one carrying consequences Meghan and Harry never imagined. Outcome 1: titles frozen. The palace could quietly freeze the children's titles exactly where they currently stand. No expansion, no new ceremonies, no further royal recognition. A slow, deliberate, and very quiet distancing from the Sussex children. Outcome 2: reclassification as private individuals. Without ever making a formal public announcement, the palace could gradually move Archie and Lilibet entirely out of the royal structure. Their names would quietly slide down official listings. They would be treated as private citizens rather than royal descendants, without any dramatic declaration. Just a steady and silent withdrawal. Outcome 3: formal removal. The most serious option, and the one now legally possible because of the internal review. If the Crown concludes that the documentation does not adequately verify lineage or establish protocol, it can remove titles and official recognition entirely, cleanly, quietly, without emotion. Simply the monarchy doing what it has always done, protecting its bloodline at any cost. According to palace insiders, this is the outcome Meghan and Harry fear most. because a public reputation can eventually be rebuilt. Public opinion can shift and change over time, but a royal title, once formally removed, does not return. As the review continues, the atmosphere inside the palace has grown completely still. This isn't about headlines. It isn't about drama. It isn't even about personal anger toward anyone. It is about the monarchy returning to its oldest and most fundamental rule. The line of succession must be completely unquestionable. And that is where the true weight of this entire investigation lies. For Meghan, this cuts straight through her entire public identity. Her projects, her branding, her documentary narratives, all built on the foundation of being a modern duchess and the mother of royal children. But if the Crown determines that her children's connection to the royal line cannot be officially verified, that royal mystique evaporates completely. For Harry, the impact is even deeper and more personal. Sources suggest he has already reached out to senior royals, frustrated and emotional, trying to understand what the palace actually intends to do. But once the Crown enters legal territory, emotion no longer plays any role. The review will continue with or without their cooperation. And for the monarchy, the decision must ultimately be made without hesitation, because the Crown has one overriding priority above all others: protect the institution, even if it means erasing those who threaten its certainty. So now, behind closed doors, the palace prepares for its next move. No announcements, no leaks, just the quiet, steady turning of a centuries-old machine, making a decision that could reshape not only Meghan and Harry's future, but the permanent place of Archie and Lilibet in royal history. The world may still be watching the public drama, but the Crown is watching something much larger: its legacy. And when the monarchy begins seriously questioning its own bloodline, it is not searching for gossip. It is preparing for a reckoning. That's all for today's special investigation here on Royal Report Daily. This story continues to develop behind palace walls, and we will keep you fully informed every step of the way. If you found this report valuable, please subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a single update. Share this video with anyone following royal family developments. Until next time, stay informed with Royal Report Daily.